Position reclassification, Article 52. We're just gonna, TA that to leave it alone. I had it as open, though, we're just gonna go to TA, no changes. What's the, what do we have with 36 again? That's the motion. What do you guys,
Well, if you want, if you're okay with adding my language, I'm okay with adding your language. With the sentence, about NeoGov. And that doesn't apply to people that apply for NeoGov.
have we already signed the other thing, or we just really?
No, because you never said you're okay with,
Do we need to discuss this, guys? And I'm just gonna just sit it out in the open. Right now, there's nothing preventing the county from going more than 5% on promotion anyway. What this does is just spell out that if you go more than 3 pay grades, which would be 4 and up, then you've never held a position before, then you're gonna drop down 10%. In my estimation, they have that right now, but this just spells it out to where, so you okay with that? Anybody need to discuss it, or?
How often does that happen? I mean, it probably
Yeah.
doesn't happen that often.
So that means okay?
yeah.
All right, so you're gonna agree with
Our added language, your added language with another sentence that says,
Well, why don't we write it on this page?
Yeah, go ahead, start with your language with our change to it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my language actually. This was from the last time, right? Oh, no, it was from 7/17.
yes, it's 17.
You want me to read it to you, or you want me to just write it out?
Well, you could just read it to me. We're gonna
Any
put
employee-
this in, we're gonna clean it up anyway, so.
Any employee accepting a voluntary demotion, I mean, you have it written on? There you go.
I've got that so far.
Voluntary demotion shall be provided the terms of such demotion in writing, which must be signed by both the HR director and the affected employee prior to becoming effective. This
Right.
provision does not apply to employees who apply, I'm not saying apply twice, are we? This provision does not apply to employees who apply for positions through neo.gov.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, rather than me writing this all out again, it's on this.
Okay.
Mhm. And you're signing 31, 32 also. right?
Yeah, that's this, right?
All right, so that kind of whittles it down to, well, 35 promotion, we're willing to withdraw our proposal on promotion in a spirit of cooperation and moving forward. But that's contingent on, we're just showing good faith and withdrawing our proposal on 35 promotion. So that would just be TA'd as the same.
Hang on a second. What's your note here? Is
It's
that?
just that, I
That's
started,
just
I
yourself,
started
right?
writing it,
All right, that's not,
and I quit, you can
Okay.
scribble that out if you want.
all right. Okay, so there's that back.
45,
You get this. You get that back. Just initial that one for me.
Well, it's definitely, yeah. Just this.
Yeah, just that, I crossed that, all the other stuff was.
Yeah, mad scientist over here.
So if I'm not mistaken, we have bargaining unit work, seniority, wages, and duration. Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there is some mechanisms.
Just to,
Yeah, like I said.
want to point out that with, wages and duration are tied together in this respect. If you look at the language on the duration, the agreement takes effect on ratification, which means that our wage proposal takes effect on ratification. Which shouldn't be a problem if we reach an agreement now, because we'll get it ratified before October the 1st.
Then our raises go in effect before October 1st.
No.
No, they go, you know,
October
we're talking about a
5th,
fiscal
I
year.
think.
So I did want to point that out.
Yeah, we're not going retroactive on
Yeah,
wages.
and.
Okay, so in other words, the county would
Obviously,
ratify it till October 1.
say that again?
The county would not ratify it until October 1.
No, if we were to reach an agreement today, we would be able to get it on the agenda on the September agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, well, the wage proposal says that the wages are adjusted on 10/1. I was thinking that there's an increase, but it's triggered by a date, and so we agreed to.
Well, let me make it clear then, there's no retro in the wage
I
proposal.
understand, I guess.
Yeah,
If we're gonna get hung up
If we're-
on
if
issues
we-
about seniority and all that, you know,
Yeah.
all of, this last stuff's tied together, so we're either gonna get it done or we're not gonna get it done.
If we go to impasse and it's months later, it's whenever it's resolved, that's when.
Well, I mean, I guess this is where it's coming down to the brass tacks here, and, you know, we're more than willing to sign if we have to, something that doesn't hold up the wages to continue bargaining, if that's what it comes down to.
You mean, like we did with 3%?
Like a side letter, right?
Yeah,
That's,
yeah, I already discussed that, and that's not.
you didn't have a contract at that point, and we had bargained a long period of time. It didn't seem right to hold that up last year. But we want a contract. This is the second contract. We want to get it done. So, you know, you got to decide.
All right, I'll decide right now,
How-
we'll withdraw our bargaining unit work proposal if you give us our seniority proposal, and then we agree to the wages, and we'll get it done, and we're done today. I think we've,
We can't do that.
I guess we don't have a contract today.
What I would suggest is that you withdraw your, we leave the status quo on the seniority. You submit the contract to your members with it all in there. If they ratify it, they ratified. If they reject it because of seniority,
I'll handle
we'll come
the
back to the
ratification
table.
process on our end, and you gave that same suggestion last time, and no offense, but I don't need the suggestions on how to ratify it.
Okay. So noted.
Well, what is your counter with seniority?
To maintain the status quo language.
So the language that you were proposing this morning is now off the table?
The introductory provisions that you had, you linked to the rest of to your section 3. I understood that those were inseparable, but you didn't need the beginning language.
I'm just saying that the beginning language was not our main objective. Main objective is that the whole thing is in a package, but your proposal was today, at the beginning of bargaining, and it's in
All right,
writing.
let's go to the article. Yep, it starts on page 14, the proposal we handed out today. What we discussed earlier is we withdrew our proposal on section 2, subsection E.
Right, well, a minute ago, you just said it's the status quo.
Well, listen to me, okay? When we started to talk about section 3, you talked about that doesn't really mean anything if you don't get the beginning part. I mean, the beginning part doesn't mean anything if you don't get your changes to section 3. That sounded to me like a rejection of our proposal. If it's not, so be it. We'll agree to the language that's shown here with the deletion of subsection E.
Okay, well, that's different than your proposal, that's the status quo. I'm just trying to identify what the proposal
Okay,
is, so.
well, now you've done that.
All right, so then, back to further clarifying your proposal, the existing section 3 seniority benefit in conjunction with the county decisions regarding item 1 layoffs, or those are also being proposed as being struck.
Well, it is redundant to section 3A.
So the answer is yes?
Yeah, we could strike it.
All right, what else do we have to talk about?
Just remember that our previous discussion about Article 45 was that this language doesn't trump 45. It only applies to the seniority component of it, right?
Yeah, I explained that, yeah, I mean, it was either gonna be here or it was going to be in 45. My suggestion was to just use the word county in front of the word seniority in Article 45, and you wouldn't need this whole sentence, because county seniority is already defined on the previous page.
And then I believe
I think we
we
changed-
added the word county before
Yeah, I think we added it.
they go to that article, whatever it is. We added the word county before it.
Although 45 reduction in force.
Yeah, I think we did that.
On page 37, we added the word county before seniority, so it relates back
Yeah.
to the definition here.
Okay, that's a change today then, right?
No, this is
No,
a change we
did
did last time.
Well, if county seniority is changed in Article 45, then there's no reason to have this provision, is there? With section 3A, I mean,
You're right, it's probably redundant in the same way that layoffs was. Do you want to strike that?
I want to keep our proposal the way it is. I'm trying to define what your proposal is, and it's evolving.
Well, that's because,
by the minute.
we're negotiating this article and we're working together on it, on the language.
Well, I disagree with that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm trying to give suggestions of, I'm trying to define what your proposal is, so I know exactly what it is. And so, it may be construed as bargaining, but I disagree with that, because we have the language that we proposed that's still on the table. and then, what we wanna have.
All right.
Well,
Well, if we're all,
it can help.
if you're back to your original proposal, then there's no agreement on sections 1 and 2?
I would agree on sections 1 and 2 if you give, or agree with us on 3. And so if you're rejecting 3,
We are rejecting
then
3.
the whole article's still up in the air.
Okay, I got
You know
you.
what I mean?
All right.
It's like, you know, you turn the switch off, you come back in the room and say, okay, well, we got this far last time, let's pick up where we left off. But do you guys are not interested in working with anything that we propose in 3? Some sort of response that can help us, we seem to be pretty, at least, understanding when we're discussing it, and actually, you know, having some discussion over different scenarios, and just, it just seems frustrating that, you know, we spend some time talking about things, explaining things, asking questions about them, we'll go through some scenarios, and you leave the room and say, no, we just reject it.
Well, like, I have a little bit of an issue. The overtime.
Is that what the hang-up is, the overtime?
Well, let me just say, when you talk about overtime, you said that some departments do a rotation, which has nothing to do with seniority. So if you are okay with that in some departments, why can't all departments do that?
If that's what's gonna take, it's gonna take to get, the rest of the language, then that's what, you know, that's movement. At least we can talk about if that's what your counter is, and if we,
Well, that's part of what I'm saying, you know, you're okay.
But, John, that's
But
really
then
an
it's not-
overtime issue and not a
Yeah,
seniority
it
issue.
doesn't fall under, yeah, that. and
We're
that's-
saying
we're
seniority is
discussing
not a
it.
factor in overtime.
So it doesn't belong here.
So it does, right, it doesn't belong here. There just
But
needs to be
that's
language
something-
somewhere that says
it's not a
that
factor. it's a
overtime will
counter.
be offered, you know, on a rotating basis. That wouldn't be in the seniority clause, because it's not seniority.
It very well could be. It could be in its own separate clause, or it could be under seniority, if you are observing seniority for overtime. If you don't want to observe seniority for overtime, then naturally it doesn't belong there. But
But if you do a
there's nothing
rotation,
improper.
it doesn't involve seniority.
the proposal, the last proposal was, that was modified by myself, was that seniority would prevail for overtime opportunities, except in those areas where rotation exists. Meaning that it's not gonna apply there, it's gonna apply, so if your counter is that we don't believe that seniority should apply for overtime anywhere, that's your counter, and I would agree the whole thing needs to come out of there, the whole
Mhm.
sentence about overtime. I agree with that.
Yeah,
Because now,
because my thinking is that, of course, it doesn't apply to every department, but the ones that have, you know, a group of people that can all do the same job and they have regular overtime, it just makes sense to have some kind of rotating basis. But my struggle is, it doesn't belong here. And I know you want stuff in the seniority, so that's kind
okay,
of,
but I mean, I just made it abundantly clear though, right?
Yeah.
That if that's the counter proposal, I would agree with you. If that's what we come to an agreement on, it all gets struck out of there, because you don't need to have rotational overtime mentioned in a seniority article,
Mhm.
because it's not based on seniority.
Yeah.
Look, if you've identified some function of the county where seniority is being recognized for overtime, I assume you think there's some place where that's.
I don't know if it is. Is
Yeah.
it?
Okay, so,
We have a sheet, Jim,
okay,
and if you want overtime, you sign the sheet. But because everybody has different days off, if a driver calls out on a Monday and you have a driver that's off on Monday, he can cover it. There's usually like 3 drivers off every day. And they do it in order, but there's also a sheet for the month. If you don't want to be called, just sign the sheet, we won't call you, we'll go to the next senior guy. And you just change it every month, you know, so that,
so that's
it
working,
So
right?
it rotates.
well, some people will never take overtime.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
have the ability to opt out.
Yeah, well, that's what we do. If you don't want to be called at 4 o'clock in the morning or 3 o'clock in the morning for overtime on your day off, we won't call you, but you gotta sign the sheet and let us know.
Sure.
You know?
Well, that makes sense to me. I don't see why we would mess with that. That's the status quo there. Why don't we just leave that alone?
Well, that's what my proposal was.
We're trying to make a general rule that applies to every department and division, and it doesn't apply to every department and division.
Again, if that's the hang-up and everything else we can reach an agreement on, let's talk about it. I just don't like getting just shut down, throwing it all out the window.
Well, we've looked at, we're
You
trying to
didn't,
figure
you
out how
didn't
to
get
do
shut down. I cut and pasted 2/3 of your proposal into the proposal we have on the table today. You're the one that set the rule, which is 1 and 2 is not important if we don't get 3.
Well,
Okay,
it's just
then it's
the
not
obvious, though,
important.
Jim. I mean, we're setting up the stage for how something is implemented. You can't implement it until you define it. So we got the definitions of things, you agree to it, but the implementation part, you don't agree to.
So your foothold for this contract is, you got the definitions, you got the preliminary in place, and you live to fight another day the next time the contract rolls around on seniority. Why can't you declare victory and go home?
There's no victory. What victory is in saying that the door is brown and the trim is blue? What does that gain? You define things, and it's nice to have the things
Because
defined.
before you had no doors. Now you got the doors.
But the thing
Next
is-
time you can figure out how to use them. We're
If
not
we take-
going there, John. We're not ready to go to where you want to go on making seniority a controlling factor. That's the bottom line on that issue. Whether that's a deal breaker for you in the totality of the contract or not, as you've reminded me later, I'm not in a position to advise you on. You got to make that
I
call.
don't need your advice, though.
Okay, I'm just telling you that if
Yeah,
that's a deal breaker, that's a deal breaker.
Why, my question is, then why has there been so much time discussing how seniority is going to work, and why are there notes being taken? And why is there
Because-
questions and scenarios and responses, and how much money is being spent during all that process if your
Well, because
position
we're
from the
not
get-go
flat
is we just
out
don't,
John, I'll tell you why. Because notes that I take today,
you didn't take any notes, she is.
I've taken
Number
lots of
one.
notes. Notes that we take today, we use later when we have discussions with management, when time changes, the next time we bargain a contract. The process is important to us because over time, the process allows for change. What can't be changed today, sometimes can be changed next time, or the time after, or maybe never. I don't know. But I like to have a record of where you're coming from, so when I get an administrator or a county commissioner or a county attorney that says to me, well, could you explain their point of view a little bit more? I pull out my notes and I say, I find the thing where I quoted you, where you said something I thought was
I'm not
noteworthy.
talking about you, Jim. I didn't see you take any notes anyway, but you're recording the whole thing. I'm just saying, it just seems odd that you want to go to the extremes of finding out, I mean, I get your point of view. You, as legal counsel, need to explain to your client, what's the opposing parties, what's it consistent of, where are they coming from, I get that. But it seems to me that the driving force behind not agreeing to seniority seems to be coming from this end of the table, and so.
You're wrong. You're trying to personalize it, and
I'm
you
not
shouldn't be.
trying to personalize anything. I
This
wanna
is
get
the
job done.
county's position,
I wanna get the
okay?
job done.
We're expressing the county's position on this point.
Yeah.
Right.
And if
I wanna get the job
if
done.
the county's position is a deal breaker from your point of view, so be it.
Yeah. Well,
Just
we'll find
like we
out.
got specific directions that wages will not be retro. That was specific. Same thing.
Until we dig our heels in and say that we wanna get retro wages. You have to bargain with us. That's your position, I understand that. And we have certain positions we take over certain things that we're not going to accept. And so, likewise, we have things that are
I-
important to us.
I know you have direction from the Teamsters, but you also represent more than 1,000 employees. And I don't know if seniority is that big a deal for them.
Well, the ones that call me is.
Okay, well, we gotta go.
I think what the issue is you guys spend way too much time with firefighters who have no use for seniority. It doesn't apply to them. They don't understand. I've had firefighters tell me, we don't want seniority. It's the last thing we would ever want in our contract. That's because you're in a different industry,
Hmm.
and it's a different
Yeah,
type of
yeah.
job.
I have other issues.
So,
Okay, well, bottom line is, if, I don't know what time you have to leave, but we can reconvene at 1:30 if you'd like, but if there's no movement, there's no movement.
let me have a minute with my committee and
Okay.
see
Well,
where.
give me a call, just let me know, yeah, because, like I said, we can come back at 1:30, have no problem. And you're okay to stay here, but just give me a call and let me know, or send me a text,
All right.
okay?
You got it.
Thank you.